Hello guys and welcome back. We've got this nice cliff here before us, which I really like, but there's a big problem with it. And that's the back. This place is not up to par right now. And it also looks pretty bad from up here by the Greek ruins. Now we gotta fix this, and that's gonna require a lot of terraforming. One of the primary blocks that we've been using here is moss blocks, as you can see up along this ridge line here, and we're gonna continue on with that, as that's gonna be a central part of the palette. Now typically, I've just got the moss from bone mealing moss blocks, and that creates all these massive holes here. And that works pretty well on a small scale. And we're gonna need about 50 stacks of moss blocks here, so now is as good of a time as any to build the moss farm. Now I've made some preparations, and those are in these shulker boxes here. This is gonna be all the redstone that's required to build a moss farm. And I'll be honest, I didn't come up with this design from the top of my head. It's made by someone called Basic Redstone, and we're gonna be using his design today. Now at some point I'll probably make a dedicated build for the moss farm, but for the moment being, this is the perfect place for it, since we're gonna cover up all of this anyway with all the terraforming that we're gonna be doing later on in this video. So with that said, I've brought over some supervisors here who can provide us with some insight while we build this moss farm. Alright, so all things considered, that went pretty well, but there is a slight hiccup, and that's the fact that I forgot that we needed sticky pistons as well. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue, because without those the farm doesn't really work. Now the rest of the farm is built and should be functional, but obviously won't work without the sticky pistons, so we're not even gonna bother trying it. But since the moss farm is so important, we have to go get those slime balls. Like otherwise we can't continue on with the project, so that has to be done. Now there's a couple of ways we can get slime balls, and one of them is going into the mines and trying to find a slime chunk and getting them from there. But I haven't really seen a lot of slimes, and we're on day 630, so I don't think that's going to be worth our time. There is another alternative though, and that one is actually much easier and gives way more slime balls, and that's going to a swamp. But there's a problem again here. I don't know where a swamp is. I've traveled very far in different directions, and yeah, I don't think we've ever seen one of those biomes. But I guess that has to change today, because we need this moss farm to be operational. So now with that said, let's head over to the dock, hop in the boat, and let's go find a swamp. Wow, a lot of villages here. Honestly, also a pretty cool location, right out to the ocean here. Actually, this is a pretty cool area. The village here, the plains, that mountain over there with the small gap in the middle. That looks pretty cool. I'm gonna note this down. Could be a future base location. 6,000 blocks out, still nothing to report from here. The search continues. At least we do get to go iceboating, which is pretty fun. I'm not even sure swamps can generate in this climate. Maybe frozen swamps exist, but I'm not sure. Alright, we've passed 10,000 blocks now, and still no sign of anything. I think we got a swamp up ahead here, at 12,000 blocks out. But I don't think it's the right type of swamp, sadly. This does appear to be a mangrove swamp. Oh. That is a jungle, okay. Oh, a wandering trader. Those guys can sell slime balls. But this guy doesn't. Almost 15,000 blocks out here, and we're at an abandoned village. You don't see those every day. Another mangrove swamp. Surely the third swamp we'll see will be the right one. Yeah, we're gonna pick up some obsidian for this one, because we need to take the portal home, that's for sure. Another mangrove swamp. So it wasn't third time to charm either. And there we go, we crossed the 20,000 block mark. Any day now. Those are some tall mountains. Imagine building a castle up there. Like, that looks so crazy. It almost looks like there's a plateau up there. I actually really want to check it out. Alright, so we've made it to the summit, and it's 255 blocks up. But yeah, you could have fit a small castle up here. But that is a pretty neat little secluded valley that's down there. Anyways, let's continue on. Is that it? There's vines on those trees there. And that's not a jungle. I think that's it. Those are way too dark to be jungle trees. How many blocks did it take? 22,500. But we're here. Ooh, frogs! What's up, buddy? Don't think we've seen those yet. So that makes the entire trip worth it. They're pretty cool. Alright, the sun is setting. Let's go slay some slimes. And one last guy for the road here. Alright, so this entire trip here has amounted to 41 slime balls, which is enough, fortunately. So with that said, let's build the portal and head back home. Alright, so we've made it back successfully, and I've replaced the parts that we needed to replace, added in the lava, filled it with water, and now hopefully, when I flick this lever over here, the farm should start working. So let's try. It's so far so good. This looks good to me. I think it's supposed to be... Oh, well that's not supposed to happen. There's not supposed to be cobblestone here. I'm gonna have to go troubleshoot this. Okay, we have to stop this before it gets too bad. Well, that's not supposed to happen. Okay, I'll get some new lava and we can try again. Alright, so I've double checked the redstone and the lava is replaced as well here. So hopefully it works this time. I'm not really sure what went wrong. Everything looked right. Maybe it was just unlucky. But yeah, let's try again here. And let's hurry up and take a look. So far so good. Alright, maybe it was just a fluke. Everything seems to be working. It would have been pretty funny if we'd gone on that massive trip only just to find out that the farm design didn't work or something like that. But it works, so that's great. Alright, so the farm seems to be working just fine, but I've stopped it momentarily here since we need to go get other materials as well for this big terraforming project. And that involves trips to foreign lands to get terracotta, and also we have to go into a cave on an expedition once again to get tuff and andesite and blocks like that. However, currently our equipment here is in a bit of a sorry state, so let's try to amend that. Oh, that's expensive. I didn't expect it to cost that much. What's this? Ooh, that's rough. Okay, I actually hope we could like combine a bunch of pickaxes here. For example, these as well, and then get like an efficiency 5 pickaxe, but that seems to be a little bit out of the question. I guess we're gonna sell for repairing this. And then also our shovel. And maybe we can combine these two? We can, okay. That gives us a little bit to work with here. It's not as much as I'd hope, but it should be able to tidy us over and get all the materials that we'll need for this build here. Now with that said, let's get this expedition started. Alright, so the expedition is over and the big resource groups have been gathered. And with that, I'm also over here to the parrots to deliver their payment, because we made a business agreement here that while we were out on the expedition, they were gonna take care of the small things, and we have that outlined actually here. And that's a trade offer. They get the seeds and I get the rest of the materials from the storage room and the chest monster. I think they've delivered as well. All these shulker boxes, I just checked, they're full of items, and we're gonna go through them in a little bit. But first, you guys are gonna get your payment. And a big stack here in the middle. There we go. Thanks for the good work, guys, and I'm looking forward to doing business with you guys again in the near future. Now with that, let's take a look here. We have a lot of varying blocks, and especially these here are what they had to bring for me, because that's a lot of small, tedious blocks together. Oftentimes, like, getting all of this takes just as long as getting, like, the rest of it. Because you just have to go run back and forth and craft all the small things. But it's done, so that's nice. Now, I did also want to go over the block palette with you guys for a little bit here. And first of all, if I just remove this row here, we can take a better look. And these blocks here are for the cliff faces. And the idea is that we're going to use these here interchangeably, since they sort of blend nicely together. And that's for the exact same reason as us having it on the cliff faces all around the outside here. Now moving on, we're also going to be using tuff, and we're going to be using muscle cobblestone. And these just blend nicely in together. Since tuff is a little bit green, has a slight green tint, so it works very well with the muscle cobblestone. And that's a little bit of an overgrown look, so I like that as well. Finally, we're also going to be using the dripstone block here. And that's just to spice things up a little bit, just to break it up, because if we only use the other ones, we risk things getting a little bit too monotone. And yeah, that's a good way to avoid that. Now, of course, when the cliff faces are built, we're also going to have a lot of open ground up top, and there we're going to be using some moss and some lime terracotta and some green terracotta, and we've done that along the cliff edge here as well. What we're also going to be adding is some coarse dirt into the mix, as well as some normal dirt, just to spice things up a little bit, so it's not only green and there's some patches with different colors. And yeah, I can promise you guys it's going to look really nice. I'm very happy with how this has turned out. I think there's not much more to say at this point in time, so I'll gather these blocks here back up, and with that, we're ready to begin the terraforming project, so let's get to it. Alright, so the build's all finished, and let's go take a look at it. We're gonna start off over here, since that's what I initially designed. And yeah, we're sort of gonna try to do the tour here in a chronological order. Now if we zoom out, we can take a look at this here, and the first thing I decided was just to build this pillar with no real fort behind it. And then after that, I just connected this part up here with the cliff edge that we have going along down here. I think one of the reasons was that I didn't just want to have this taper off. I was very happy with how this turned out, and I decided that that was sort of going to serve as a baseline for the fort process for the rest of the cliffs as well. And as you can see, I've tried to sort of continue that onwards here to have some elevation differences, right? Because we have some lower elevation here and then some other parts that are a little bit higher just besides it. And yeah, that's what I then decided to try to do here as well. So what I did was I built along here, having this sort of taper off to potentially at the time serve as an entrance as a way we could walk up, but I ended up eventually deciding against it. And after that I was sort of considering having this be sort of a semi-plateau with, yeah, just the moss and dirt and stuff just continuing on as a layer here. But for some reason I just went with the flow and created this indent, and I'm very happy with how that has turned out as well. Some of these things that you don't really think too much about but just start doing end up very nice and add a lot of uniqueness to the build. And I can see I need to put in some water here, which I've missed, but that's all good now. In general, something I've tried to prevent is having the slope be too steep. We have a little bit here where it's quite steep, but other than that we have it sort of very layered, sort of to prevent landslides, because as you can see, something like this, if it was just like moss and dirt and stuff, could just slide down into this pond here. And in order to come up with a reason for that not having happened, I've tried to use a bunch of walls that prevent that, to sort of keep the dirt and ground layer where it is right now. Now continuing on, I then just did, as I have done before, using some different sort of color palettes and mixing them in nicely to spice things up a little bit, because even though that we've used, for example, light gray wool and andesite here, which go nicely together and when mixed like we've done here, also sort of breaks the repetitive part of the pattern, you still need to sprinkle in other colors as well. And yeah, as I mentioned when we discussed the palette earlier, tuff and mossy cobblestone, along with just moss, blends in quite nicely together, especially once you go a little bit further away here. But one thing I was consistently trying to keep in mind was to have some plateaus at different elevation levels, since having everything be too steep would make it a bit boring and sort of remove some of the character that we could potentially have in this. And yeah, once again, I'm very happy with how this has turned out. Another thing to note is that this sort of tapers off, right? It's not like on the other side where we have all the overhanging cliffs. I did decide to add one here, just a small one, just to spice it up a little bit, because yeah, again, it's a part of breaking the patterns. Patterns are nice, but if you don't break them every once in a while, things just risk getting too repetitive, and yeah, repetitiveness can end up being quite boring. After that done, I decided to wing some of the elevation levels. As you can see, I've sort of traced some curves here that go around for the different elevation levels. I tried to mix it up a little bit, not to keep things too repetitive. I say repetitive a lot here, I'm repeating myself. But yeah, I still wanted some parts here where we have a lot of open field to play with. And I think if we use another perspective when viewing this build here, I think it's going to look good that we have some parts that are slightly sloping upwards and some that are quite steep. Now, I haven't really done anything like this crater feature here on the other side, but I did decide to add in a little bit just to spice it up as well. And that's this small marine or fracture, you could also call it, which is a distinctive feature in the landscape. And also try to further emphasize that by having this be the tough and much cobblestone combination, with this being the andesite and light gray wool combination, just to mark sort of a natural barrier in the cliff here. Now, initially when building this, the plan was actually to have all of this slope off down to where the cliff faces are here. But yeah, when I built that little feature that we have over there, I decided that the cliff faces here was going to be the way to go. And that also actually gave me another idea, and that is for us to have a lake here in the center. And that's also the reason that this part over here isn't entirely completed, because I want to have a river flowing through this part over here and out onto the plain that we have below. Now, I decided that I want to continue on with adding some Greek features. We have some that we've built in the previous episodes over here, and I thought it would be nice to have them sort of be a part of this build as well. I think it adds a lot of character to have these parts sort of strewn about in the world. And in general, these structures that we have here are sort of serving as an extension of the Greek-inspired civilization that we've built over there, or the remnants of it. And that's also the reason for this. What is a bit of a small enclosed vineyard or something like that, a personal garden perhaps, which again just adds character to the build. Now, these builds are actually not that big. I actually had a watchtower planned out as well, which we're gonna go take a look at in my testing world. And here it is. This is the watchtower that I was trying to get to fit into the build as well, but the issue was that I couldn't actually find a good location for it because it's a little bit too big, even though it's quite a bit smaller than the other model that we have here. And the reason that the size of the structure became an issue was that when initially I wanted to place it up here, we've had a problem with it sort of taking away from the size of the cliff, because if we had something that's sort of up in this height as well, it's going to make the cliff look a whole lot smaller, which is something I've actively been trying to avoid, since it would draw attention away from what we've built here today. That's also one of the reasons that these small trees here are just that, small trees, since having like a 10 or 20 block tall tree would make the cliff look very small. And it's all about like the perception of how you view things, right? And while I agree that these trees that we have before us here could probably be improved slightly, the simplicity is also on purpose, since it further like emphasizes the cliff that we've built and doesn't take anything away from it. It doesn't attempt to draw the eye of the viewer. Now, as I've alluded to, we're probably going to be building a river here that flows into a waterfall that trickles down here. This is still on the drawing board. Nothing has been designed for this part yet, so it's still a little bit up in there, but most likely a waterfall feature. And then sort of have it continue down into a river here that flows under the stone arch and connects up nicely with the river that we have over there by the jungle. And probably a lot more terraforming on this part as well here, to improve it like we've improved the cave entrance as well, since the design here is a little bit different than what we have here. For example, all the clay and stuff probably has to go. It was a nice attempt when we built it, but I think we can build something that looks cooler. So with the big terraforming project in the background completed, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I certainly enjoyed making it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.